At 9:33 in the morning, 24 contacts cross into Moscow's southeastern approach at 160 kilometers an hour. Clear sky, full daylight, 12 million people underneath. They are flying a heading that ends at Kapotnya, a refinery 15 kilometers from the Kremlin, close enough that its flare stack is visible from the ring road. The first battery opens fire over the rooftops. 8 kilometers behind the wave it is shooting at, the rest of the package is still inbound. Before noon, Moscow will announce 194 drones destroyed on the approach to the city. It will be the largest air attack on the capital since 2022, and the city will still lose the morning. Moscow has 3 rings of air defense and 1 refinery. Only one of those things cannot be replaced. The Gazprom neft plant at Kapotnya runs on 2 primary units, the LO-AVT-6 and the Europlus complex, 2 hearts behind 1 fence. One of them stopped beating 48 hours ago. On June 16th, the AVT-6 goes down. Primary crude unit, 140,000 barrels a day, 53% of everything the refinery can process. The piece Ukraine's SBU describes as the heart of the plant, which means the batteries firing over Kapotnya on the morning of the 18th are defending the 47% that is left, and they are defending it with 57 E-6 interceptors and R-77 air-to-air missiles against airframes that cost $55,000 each. Plywood, composite, a small engine, a warhead. Behind those batteries stands a refinery that absorbed roughly 500 billion rubles of modernization, about $6.81 billion. Every interception is a highway toll paid with a gold bar, and the traffic keeps coming. The swarm does not fly straight at it, it drifts. The FP-1 navigates on an inertial platform with satellite correction and built-in resistance to spoofing and jamming, 600 kilometers of range, a warhead between 60 and 120 kilograms, a solid booster to get it off the rail. The inertial core cannot be jammed. The correction can, so the navigation band fills with noise across every approach corridor except one, and a drone that loses its satellite fix does exactly what its logic tells it to do, which is hunt for the clean sector. Water on a flat roof does not have to be pushed anywhere. It only needs 1 drain left open. 24 machines come in on the first wave, roughly half of them decoys flying with no warhead at all. 8 kilometers back is the payload. Lyuty, the An-196, 4.4 meters long, 6.7 meters of wingspan, 250 to 300 kilograms all up, a 50 to 75 kilogram warhead behind a gasoline pusher propeller, $200,000 a copy. What comes to meet them was built for a different war. The MiG-35 carries the Juke AE active array, detection out to 130 to 160 kilometers, 30 targets tracked, 6 engaged at once. On the rails, R-77s, 190 kilograms each, Mach 4, 80 kilometers of reach in the base variant and 110 in the RVV-SD, a 22.5 kilogram warhead on a laser fuse active radar seeker in the terminal phase. Fire and forget. Detection is not the problem, airspeed is. A weapon system optimized to kill something doing Mach 2 across 100 kilometers now has to solve a target crossing the suburbs at 160, and the geometry punishes every advantage the fighter has. 1 pass kills 1 drone, then the jet is kilometers past the fight and committed to a wide arc back, while the rest of the wave keeps flying its line. It is a bullet train assigned to door-to-door deliveries, enormous speed, and every stop costs a mile of track. The helicopters come in underneath, and they come in slow. The K-52 Alligator weighs 2,800 kilograms at maximum takeoff and runs 2 Klimov VK2500 turbo shafts at roughly 2,400 to 2,500 shaft horsepower each. It has no tail rotor. 2 coaxial rotors turn against each other on the same mast, and the torque of one cancels the torque of the other, so nothing on the aircraft is spending power just to keep the nose from swinging. The whole rotor system works on lift and control alone. Top speed 300 kilometers an hour, cruise at 260, against a drone doing 160. This is the first Russian platform of the morning that can simply pull alongside. Its gun is the Shipunov 2A42, 30mm in the NPPU-80 mount, 460 to 470 rounds aboard, 550 to 800 rounds a minute at the high cadence setting, 960 meters per second at the muzzle. The shell crosses a kilometer in about a second. In that same second, the drone moves 45 meters. And the gunner is not leading a maneuvering target because the target does not maneuver. It flies the heading it was handed before takeoff, so it works. A K-52 matching speed with an FP-1 is a crane that can stop beside the window instead of flying past it, and for a few minutes over the southeastern approach, the kill rate belongs to the helicopters. Then the belts run dry. 470 rounds go fast at 800 a minute, and the aircraft carrying them has to break north, land, and rearm. There is no second magazine, no orbit to hold. The helicopters leave. The corridor empties for the length of a turnaround, and the second wave is already inside it. Underneath all of it sits the system that is supposed to make the rest unnecessary. The 96K6 Pancier S1, SA-22 in NATO reporting is 20 tons of radar, missiles, and guns on an 8x8 chassis, and around Moscow it increasingly sits on dedicated towers instead of wheels, lifted for line of sight over the rooftops. 12 50-76 missiles ride in 2 banks, 75.7 kilograms at launch, radio command guidance, roughly 20 kilograms of continuous rod fragmentation in the nose. 2 2A38M cannons, 30 millimeters, cover whatever gets inside the missile envelope. On paper, the battery reaches 12 kilometers out and 6 kilometers up against cruise missile class targets, with a minimum engagement range of 2,500 meters and guns to 4 kilometers. 12 missiles is not the number that fails on June 18th. 4 is. The acquisition radar can hold dozens of contacts. The fire control can engage 4 of them at a time, each engagement holding a dedicated beam until impact, 20 carts in the checkout line, and 1 working barcode scanner. Everything behind the 4th target waits its turn, and the queue is closing at 160 kilometers an hour. What does reach the front of that line meets the wrong warhead. 20 kilograms of fragmentation is calibrated to shred aluminum spars, fuel lines, and hydraulic runs. The FP-1 is plywood and composite wrapped around a small engine. The proximity fuse fires on schedule, the fragments go through, and most of them find nothing worth breaking. It is a punch thrown into a curtain. Full energy delivered, nothing on the other side that resists it, and when the tubes are empty, reloading is a crane job, not a magazine swap. The battery goes on seeing everything and stops being able to touch any of it. At least 1 Panzer around Moscow has been photographed carrying an incomplete missile load. The last line is a man in a parking lot with a tube on his shoulder. The 9K38 Igla SA-18 puts a 10.8 kilogram missile in a launcher that brings the whole system to 17. 9 kilograms and 1.57 meters. Dual band infrared seeker, 5.2 kilometers of reach, 6 in the Igla S, a ceiling of 3.5 kilometers, roughly Mach 2 off the rail. From acquisition to launch, 1 operator working alone needs about 13 seconds. Then he needs more time to change the tube. The drones over Kapotnya are nowhere near 3.5 kilometers. They are low, they are small, and by the time they clear the rooftops, they are already inside the missile's minimum arming distance. A fire extinguisher that only arms past 5 meters, with the fire already in your hands. There is video from June 19th of a Russian soldier firing a man-pads at a drone at point-blank range and missing it. Then the Seeker's own problem. It hunts heat, and the heat it is built to find is a small piston engine, roughly the thermal signature of a lawnmower. Behind that engine, the refinery is burning from the drones that arrived first. Every launch after those fires start is an infrared seeker aimed into a wall of burning fuel and asked to pick out the warmest thing in it. Over the process units themselves, steel mesh, birdcage netting strung above the equipment. Analysts put its practical value at close to nothing against airframes of this mass carrying this much explosive, and the physics agree. The net stops the drone. The drone burns or detonates where it stops, and the wreckage falls inside the yard, on top of the thing the net was built to cover. The shot that ends the morning is a rushed one. Somewhere under the smoke column, a launcher takes a target at short range and low angle. A Pancier, according to the Astra channel, and the 57E6 goes under the drone. That missile does not fly itself. It rides a radio command link, which means the battery flies it onto the target, and a firing solution built in seconds against a low crosser puts 20 kilograms of fragmentation somewhere past the drone. Behind the drone is the refinery. The missile finds a fuel tank instead and opens it. The lid comes off the tank and goes into the air. The moment is filmed from Novaya Kotelniki and geolocated afterward, one clip inside the heaviest video record of any engagement of this war, because this fight happens in daylight over a densely populated district with a phone in every window. Then the Europlus goes down, the complex that came online in July 2020, the plant's second primary unit, the remaining 47%. Offline, at least 5 separate fires burn across the site. 17 people are injured, 2 of them children. 4 airports around the capital suspend flights. The air defense of Moscow fires all morning, puts a missile into a fuel tank of the thing it is defending, and announces 194 kills. And 194 is a real number that changes nothing. Moscow has 3 rings of air defense and 1 refinery. Only one of those things cannot be replaced. The interceptors come off production lines. So do the R-77s. So do the 30mm belts. And a crew that shot badly on the 18th can be retrained by autumn. The ELO AVT-6 does not come off a production line, neither does the Europlus. Between them, they took roughly 500 billion rubles and years of construction, and there is exactly one of each within 15 kilometers of the Kremlin. A hospital can replace every ambulance in its fleet inside a week. It cannot replace the operating theater. Moscow spent 2 decades getting very good at counting what it shot down, against an attacker who only ever needed to arrive twice. The repair estimate starts at 6 months, and the plan is considered unlikely to run again before 2027. What goes offline with it? 11.6 million tons of crude processed in 2024, 2.9 million tons of gasoline, 3.2 million tons of diesel, up to 40% of Moscow's fuel market. Around 70% of the gasoline in the capital region, Ostafyevo airfield, draws its fuel from this plant. Russia is already carrying a fuel crisis across roughly 78 regions, with a state of emergency declared in Crimea. On June 15th, one day before the first strike, gasoline traded at 69.11 rubles a liter. The 2 units feeding the capital came off the board over the 72 hours that followed. Ukraine never had to reach the front line to do this. It had to reach 15 kilometers from the Kremlin twice and hit the 2 pieces that cannot be ordered again. Moscow could shoot down 194 drones and still lose. So what exactly is air defense for when the target cannot be replaced? Tell me in the comments. And the last time Ukraine reached something Russia treated as untouchable, it was a harbor. And what happened after the strike was worse than the strike. That one is on the screen now.